Welcome to B2B Storytelling Stars. I'm your host, Jay Akonzo, and I've partnered with Intuit Mailchimp to create this mini-series helping B2B marketers, leaders, and practitioners differentiate their messages and become stronger storytellers when they show up publicly. Together, Mailchimp and I believe that B2B is home to some of the most important ideas, messages, and stories on earth. And so, in this series, we're taking you behind the scenes as I work with 3 different leaders and marketers through part of my coaching process that I really use with clients so they can differentiate and resonate. And so can you. In this episode, you'll meet our 3 storytellers and we'll start the process of developing a differentiated message for each of them, talking about the right language to use and how to apply that message to the project of focus that they most care about in their business right now. In future videos, you'll go inside other group calls and a one-on-one that I have with each of them. Each video will also arrive with a resource or a template that I really use to develop my work to stand out and to hit home, or use with my clients and our members. So you can download this template wherever you find the show and become a stronger storyteller in your work as a B2B marketer and communicator. In my career, I've worked as a storyteller in marketing and media roles for brands that span the globe and exciting new startups. I've given keynotes about differentiation and creativity to 4,000 marketers and 40 CMOs. I've hosted documentary series and podcasts and consulted both brands and individual voices to help them stand out easier and resonate deeper through the power of their thinking, not the volume of their content. Today, I'm also the host of the podcast, How Stories Happen. Every episode, our guests will dissect one signature story piece by piece. And to end this series, we're actually going to feature all 3 of our storytelling candidates on their own episode of my show. So you can hear them break apart, analyze, and continue to improve the work we really did together. In our first group call, which you'll see selections from in just a moment, I wanted to start each of our storytellers by digging down to the root of their thinking and their perspective, either as individuals or across their whole team. How do they really feel about their industry? And how do we put language to that so that they can appear as leaders, not just yet another group of experts sharing basic tips and tricks or how-to content? That might have worked in 2012, but last I saw, the internet and the world has all changed since then. So what we really need for our storytellers is what I call a distinct and ownable premise. A premise is a defensible assertion that you make about your industry or your area of expertise, and you pull that premise out from your unique perspective, informing your choices and your reputation. It's the big idea that you own, the mission that you have, as you convey how you see things, either as an individual or a team, and how you plan to use your ideas and your content to lead your audience towards something better for them. Is your message differentiated and memorable? We each need a coherent and powerful premise that we become known for, because you can't own your audience, as some people like to say, but you can own an idea in their minds. That's the power of a premise. It's like the coherent circle you draw across your entire platform. Differentiation begins with a premise, and so do the best storytellers. That's the topic of today's group call. But first, let's meet our storytellers. Sarah Stockdale is the founder and CEO of Growclass. Growclass provides world-class training for mid-career growth marketers, along with a private network of peers offering community and mentorship. With Sarah, finding a project of focus and delivering a message and all the different stories and content that follow needs to be a focus of hers, but she's kind of caught between using her personal brand and using her business's brand to grow. So that's going to be something that we're challenged by when we work with Sarah in this series.
I talk about too many things. I have too many things I'm passionate and excited about. I make it hard for folks to figure out whether or not it resonates.
Natalie Taylor is head of marketing for the startup Capsule, a video editor meant for content and marketing teams at large enterprise brands. Natalie is a beloved voice in B2B, and she admits she's not actually her buyer. Her buyer at Capsule is the head of creative, or maybe the head of video more specifically, at large global brands. So Natalie's challenge is actually twofold. One, she's not the buyer. How do you develop a message and content that people care about when you are not a part of that tribe? And 2, unlike, say, Sarah, who's the CEO and founder of her business, Natalie has other internal stakeholders to navigate. And while they support her, their voices still count for what Natalie is working on. So that's the challenge working with Natalie.
They're no longer the creator. They're going to be the conductor. They're not making all of the video. They're advising how video should be made.
And finally, Shez Mehra. Shez is one of the world's leading voices and thinkers in the realm of sonic branding, using music and sound to create more memorable brand experiences. He recently left an executive position at a brand that had acquired his previous startup, and now he's back out on his own, looking to use his personal platform and his expertise to craft both a really coherent and crisp story and the right service offerings to grow his own personal business.
Imploring people to think about and challenging them about to say, look, when you close your eyes, does your brand even exist? I'm struggling a little bit because I have 3 companies that all address this issue or derivatives of this issue in different ways.
So it's high stakes for all 3 individuals, but in differing ways. And it all starts in the same place to become a more effective, more memorable storyteller and brand builder. What idea do you want to own? What is that differentiated premise informing everything else you do? On this call, I've urged our participants to go deeper inward and be more honest with themselves about how they view their industries and what exactly they're trying to solve and then trying to say so people get it. Because as experts in B2B, we have to embrace what you know might matter, but what you say and how you say it determines whether or not they care. Don't just reach your audience, resonate with them. And now, please enjoy some selected clips from my first group call with all 3 of our storytellers. We are in the, let's call it the 2-drink minimum period of our work together. What I don't want is for you to try and make everything sound great. I don't want the positioned language until we're ready to go to market with these ideas. What I actually want is brutal honesty from you. So
Cool.
Be messy, be ranty, go off the rails. I will synthesize. I will grab things you're throwing at me for all of you and be like, that's interesting. I don't get that, etc. But your job is just to open up and be ranty, because this is not something that we're looking for yet, the final product. We're looking for honesty.
Yep. Okay, so their goals are they want to help their organization move to being video first, but for a lot of reasons, they're not able to do that. So they're missing out on more effective video communication just because the requests are so high and the resources are so limited. They want to free up the bottleneck that, they are partly causing within enterprise video creation. And they also want to be able to work on some higher tier creative video projects, because they're getting bogged down by these requests from all across the organization that can range from, we just need some captions and we need to add an intro and outro, and we just need to add some music, like some pretty basic things that are just tedious for them. And they don't have as much time or resources to work on really high tier creative video projects.
This is great. So I'm leaving some notes here. So a couple of notes. So one thing to flesh out, and this is not to update here. This is to think about as we arrive at your premise, right? Moving to a video first strategy. Is that something the C-suite sees? Is it something this individual wants themselves? Why do they want it? Somebody who wants to be video first might just love video, or they might have something else that they're really out there looking for and thinking about, or that drives them. Maybe they're not even articulating it because they have to hide behind something that sounds acceptable in a corporate sphere. And then Capsule comes out and pinpoints what that is and talks about it. And people go, wow, do I feel seen?
It was a little tricky thinking about frustrations that from our perspective versus our target market perspective. But I think
here's a framing that might help. What do you wish for those people that they either aren't seeing or aren't getting? You wish them well. You wish them the best. You are a B2B storyteller, obviously. You're trying to illuminate and support their very best work. And you're looking at their reality and you're like, oh, I feel for you. So it might not be what you are enduring. It's what they're going through.
Yeah, I think part of it is helping, again, going back to creative teams being able to do the projects that they are best suited to do and actually qualified to work on. So it's really about, and I'll get into this later, but it's really about kind of inverting the funnel request where everything is going through the creative team, but we want all of those teams who are requesting those videos to be able to do 90% of the work themselves, so that the creative team is more just like an a conductor, an orchestrator, approver, collaborator, and they have so much more time and bandwidth to work on the projects that they are really great at and passionate about and move the brand forward.
There does seem to be this thing that maybe as a SaaS tools company, you would be reticent to say, I think you got to run headlong at it, which is there's this human element at play. And maybe it feels selfish, but we're all going through that. Every professional wants that, right? I got into this work because of this, but this is what I'm doing. So our tool set is going to let you only work on the things that uniquely require you. And our content series might be an exploration of how we all maximize that. I don't know. It's still blurry. Like that's not quite crisp enough, but you're starting from a place of like, I'm going to speak the unspoken, which is like, it's not really about making it video first. It's not really about democratizing video creation. It's about the fact that like you as an individual practitioner or leader, you're not working on the stuff that you are uniquely required to do. And we wanted to build tools that unleash that.
I don't know if this is like the thing, but part of it is they need to let go of total control because everything goes through them. And now everything is not going to go 100% through them.
Yeah.
And I think that will be a big shift. So they need to let go of total control of every video going through them. They're no longer the creator. They're going to be the conductor. They're not making all of the video. They're advising how video should be made and keeping the brand consistent. So moving from a doer to an approver.
And so like, here is the first real change that I think Capsule could own, which is like, what we really do is we enable these amazing heads of creative to get better at balancing and learning where and how to create and where and how to conduct. Why do we do that? Because we want them to only work on the things that uniquely require them, right? Which is what all of them want. So that's the plain language goal they have. So if you're giving a keynote, you're not waltzing up and being like, we all want to do video. You're waltzing up and being like, we're all creatives here. We want to do the work we're called to do. We want to do the work that's inside of us that uniquely requires us. And right now that's not happening. Why is that not happening? Because, well, let's take video. Here's what's happening in video. You're getting all these tickets. You're reactive. You're restricted, all these things. And so what can we do instead? Right? Well, let me tell you a story of somebody and how they did it. And it illuminates it. And that's something we're going to develop. And then at the end of it, you're like, and how did they do that? What did they really master in the end? Not team camaraderie and trust, honestly, not like some better workflow or tool for their work as a video creator or creative. What they really mastered is they are a master at learning where they need to create and where they need to conduct. And they have all the skills underneath all those. And right now you are over indexing on the one that got you here, create. We got to make you a better conductor. We're Capsule. That's what we believe. Not that this is the final language, but this is a thread that has emerged from your writing that you need to start pulling. So homework is watch this video back and start to rewrite your empathy statement with this language in mind. Ah, yes, the empathy statement, how you tell your story with greater empathy. In other words, how you pitch your premise most succinctly. It's a 4-part structure of a message written to resonate. First, you align with them. What are they going through? What are their goals? How are they approaching that? Then agitate the pain or the problem. What's standing in the way? And what do you know to be true in their heart of hearts? Then make your assertion. What's the big change that you propose or that you see, and you're here to teach and maybe provide some kind of service or product to help them embrace. And then invite them to your platform, to your project, to whatever comes next as they journey with you towards that change. And you can get this template alongside this video episode at jayakonzo.com/stars. So that's what we're all working on inside this program, is the empathy statement with each of our storytellers. But it really all starts by drilling down to the root of your thinking and your perspective to build up the language in this order so people care what you have to say. Okay, next up, Shez discusses the importance of sonic branding and helping clients see what he sees about its power. As a veteran expert in this field, Shez often says publicly that when you close your eyes, most of the world's brands disappear. And so he knows that's a piece of his platform or IP, but how does he pitch that as a premise?
You know, aside from when you close your eyes, most of the world's brand is disappearing. Well, what can we do about that? How can we take sound and audio from an afterthought and a post-production conversation at the very end of it all and think about what happens when we move it to the very beginning or strategically, intentionally? So that's what I'm imploring people to think about and challenging them about, to say, look, when you close your eyes, does your brand even exist? Now let's lean into that. And through that, a number of things can happen. And this is kind of where I'm struggling a little bit, because I have three companies that all address this issue or derivatives of this issue in different ways. But the through line becomes like, I help marketing leaders and brands leverage sound as a superpower. That's the
Right.
premise,
Right.
or I think that's the premise. I could be completely off base here.
Yeah,
So I'm
no, so
just
that's the
spitballing here.
category, that's the topic or the competency. What I want
Okay.
to know is if I stacked you against, and even if there's not that many or there's none, like if I stacked you against competitors or, you know, a disgruntled teammate or peer spun out of your orgs and decided to compete with you or something like that. Imagine a competitive set, right? Even if none
Mhm.
exists. And I'm looking at like a spreadsheet of them. I can't compete if I'm on that spreadsheet on price because it's a race to the bottom. I'm commodified, right? So
Yeah.
I help brands leverage sound and audio for some kind of gain here. That is what you do. And it is an important thing to put on the homepage, to talk about people, et cetera. You know, I help entrepreneurs, mostly who sell high ticket services, differentiate and become better storytellers. I mean, get in line. How many people do that? Maybe a smaller amount than help them with other tasks, but still a hefty amount. So what I have to do is make a defensible assertion. So that's
Mm.
what I'm looking for is what is the thing that you're willing to stake your reputation on? That's basically an opinion, but it's an opinion that's been defended through your content, your years of experience. You can back it up with story, maybe educational frameworks, proof points, right? So you're
Got it.
saying you should care about sonic branding or audio or insert
Mhm.
category here more than you do because you should care about what? Like what's
So
underneath the how is what I'm
is
hunting.
it too vague or ambiguous or broad or too much of a macro statement to say when you close your eyes, most of the world's brands disappear? Like
I
that.
love that. I think that's a thread. I think you use that line, but I don't think that's the thing. It's more of a keyhole really than a window
Right.
into your house, into your worldview. What we're looking for is like, what's the door? And
Mm.
so let's do these prompts because I think it'll help reveal that because we have to align first with them before we can figure out your assertion.
When I ask that question, people sort of say, yeah, you know what? That is totally something we need to do. And there's not much resistance, but I have to your point, like I have to spark that for them to answer
Yeah,
the question in their own head.
right.
Once they do, the sales conversation is quite fluid.
Yep.
Um,
What
you
does
know,
sound do that a visual or reading something might not? Like what is it
well,
about
yeah,
this mean?
well, sound and music is emotional, and emotion is where memories are hardwired. And like that's the reason why like we don't teach our kids the ABCs by reading it to them. We literally sing it to them, and that's how they learn it. And that is tapping into our brain going back millions of years, because that's how the human brain is engineered. And before we walk, talk, or see, we are responding to signals in the womb. So this is our most powerful, most visceral first sense we develop as human beings, and yet marketers
Yep.
and brands have like lost sight of this.
Here's what I've noticed. You are such an expert in your area that you're really quick to jump or talk about that solution. What we all have to do collectively, and this is, I think, what really good visionaries do, is they just become so intimately aware of the problem. So, like, recall is the first thing you said, and you can explain it in really eloquent terms that this is the benefit of audio. You know, there's probably others, but you're like, listen, recall matters. Like, everyone's trying to be more visible. The brands that win are more memorable. And if you believe that, you got to care about the audio. You have to.
I don't want to be talking to people. I'd rather say very little and have them rationalize it in their own minds,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You give them enough
Um,
and then they
yeah,
fill in the blanks. Yep.
yeah,
I think what we're missing is like, what is your pithy turn to then
yeah.
say, it's not this, it's this, or reveal sound. In other words, in part 3 here, we're just looking for the tight language, which I think is good homework for you. So remember, the empathy statement is align, agitate, assert, invite. Shez's work from here is to figure out these pivots, specifically the pivot from aligning with his audience around their goals, they want brand recall, and then agitating the problems as he sees it, but they're not doing the things that are most conducive to being more memorable. And so the third part of his empathy statement, his assertion. Well, you should care more about sonic branding and all things sound. Placed in that order, people see why it's inescapable and obvious and why they should care. So Shez has to come up with the perspective shift that others should be making, which then helps them see sonic branding as crucial. I think that perspective shift is to understand the power of being more memorable. Next up, Sarah Stockdale, CEO of Growclass, on using her personal brand to grow that education and community business of hers, and the messiness of balancing her personal brand with a corporate brand.
I can give you a little bit of a quick overview. So
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I said messy is because I have multiple things that I do and multiple things that I talk about.
I think the question is like, what do you feel you need to draw a coherent circle around? Is it a project, like it's a podcast? Is it your brand of Growclass, which would include maybe a podcast, and that podcast could carry the brand's premise or have a supporting, more narrow premise, which is how I approach my podcast, by the way. You know, my whole resonance overreach thing, if you hit my homepage, that stuff becomes clear and the ways I articulate it are clear. My podcast is about storytelling because that tends to be the thing, the window into my worldview. And I have a sub premise for how I approach storytelling that makes sense if you know my platform's premise, right? It's like, oh, logically, a guy who says that would approach storytelling like this, you know? So there's like the coherent circle that incorporates your projects, which is your overall brand. Then honestly, I'd put above that, there's you, which is like the company you founded and lead, the projects they're in, but also your personal projects. So where do you feel you need the coherent circle that we can draw?
I think the coherent circle, as we're going through this exercise, I think it's around my personal premise, like my personal kind of brand statement. If I was going to get up on a stage, what would you assume I'm talking about?
Yeah.
If I'm writing, what would you assume it's going to be about? If I'm going
Right.
to host a podcast through Growclass or whatever, what would you expect from me? And that's what I think that's the reason I was struggling with the podcast is because I don't have that. Like I don't have the thing that everything flows from.
A lot of times I keep saying, you know, I would get you if I spent time with you. Well, that's a high friction ask for an audience, is to spend time with us. And so there's two types of value that we offer the world, discovered and apparent. And discovered value really does take time to discover it. I got to open the book and read the pages. I got to meet you for an hour for coffee. I got to hear your whole speech. I got to hire you as a consultant. I got to buy your tools or your education or your services. It's going to take a while. So how do you take at least an element of your discovered value and make it readily apparent? I'm thinking of Ann Handley, the chief content officer at Marketing Profs, and an amazing author of the book, Everybody Writes. Probably doesn't say this anywhere as succinctly, but I know her. In other words, the discovered value I have of her is that she cares about helping marketers and other professionals write in a way that fills both their pipelines and their souls.
Yes.
Like that's something that you're like, she goes, they're the same. Like you need both present. So that's her like overall assertion. So then what's her book? Everybody Writes, you know, not only the elite write. So she's using her assertion on something she loves within marketing, which is very simple and can crisply be articulated, but it's been built over time to then address, how do I show up as a speaker? How do I show up as chief content officer and partner at Marketing Profs and organize their annual event? How do I write my book? All that. So that's what we're looking for from you, is like your perspective on marketing. I would even say, careers in marketing. I don't think you're thinking about, you know, anything that you think about in marketing. I believe, knowing you as I do, it dovetails back to, and then here's how someone or the someones I serve develop their careers well.
The politics and what I do for my day job, they meet in terms of like community and enabling like how community can be disruptive to capitalism and how like treating each other as not transactional resources to, I'm going to hire Jay as my coach and pay him, and that is our relationship, period. Like having a network of people around you who can add value to your experience through friendship and community versus transactions.
Yeah. Right.
Is how you grow a career. And that's why we care so much about community.
Just to plant a couple plain language, in other words, it's not from you, like you didn't come up with this language, ideas in your head that you can think about, even write about, but on our next one, in our one-on-one, we should put it to the doc. Don't go it alone. It's not what you know, it's who you know. You might challenge the what you know part, but you know, who you know. There's all these things that pre-exist your platform. And one way an author comes at their big concept premise and book is they observe the seminal works of their space, or maybe the latest works, and they're like, where do I disagree? and what's broken or missing. That's what I want for you, is to think about other people, seminal works, your existing preconceptions around community, around ideas of like building a career, around notions of don't go it alone or join a community, or it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I want you to think about like, well, what is actually, what am I saying underneath that, or as separate from that, and start to shift from it's a podcast to it's Sarah Inc. We are in the messy phases. It's not going to feel clean or good. I did see some folks nodding throughout. So hopefully you're like, okay, I can kind of see where this is heading. But the hardest part of all this is not how one creates a thing that a million people have created before us, or how to massage copy. Proven, and you're experts in that. It's much more, how do I get more honest with myself and with my audience, and then articulate that so they go, oh my gosh, yes, this, I feel seen. This is so for me. Hey there, Jay again. I hope you enjoyed and benefited from this inside look at a piece of the process of developing the initial language built on our perspective that becomes an ownable premise to fuel everything we do. And if you would like to apply some of the things you saw unfold today in your work, well, I have a template available for you for free. I've created it across years of developing my own premises for projects and my own personal brand, and working with clients, both big brands, tiny startups, and now more than ever, individuals like the 3 you saw today. So that template arrives along with this video. You can find it at jayaconzo.com/stars. And anybody who subscribes via email has already received it. Remember, here in B2B, our stories matter. We shape markets, we impact careers, we help people build their businesses. This work is important. But if we can't make that clear to others, and if we don't really feel that ourselves, why would anyone care about what we know or what we sell? And so we need our distinct perspective to become our positioning. We need the right language, we need the right premise, and then we can use that to fuel everything we do, our stories, our content, our evangelism of our cause. If we don't have a clear premise, then we're just a commodity, somebody who blends in with all the other experts and B2B content creators who are flooding the internet right now. Remember, the goal is not just to get in front of people. The goal is to ensure they care. Keep up with this series and watch as our storytellers keep developing their ideas and their projects, and download more resources for becoming a stronger B2B communicator by going to jayaconzo.com/stars. And you can follow me and Mailchimp in all these places. Keep making what matters, because when your work matters more, you need to beg for people's attention less. We'll see you next time.